What's good, everybody? I'm DJ Av. How you doing? And today we're going to be doing another overview in which it's a revised version of the Electra 2 one that I did yesterday. So smash that like button if you like PR mess cleanup. Yeah. But anyways, Electra 2 is a multi-timbre, multi-layered synth, and you can do many things with it. And I will explain in this overview of what can you do and what are the different parts. So starting off with this part right here, I am in this layer. So basically, when you see this on button here, when it's lit up and it's not lit up, that means nothing is on. That's nothing is working. So if you actually go right here from a clean sound and reset all, it will start like this and you'll see the on. So if you have this off at any time when you're mixing in between your layers, you will get no sound. So you got to make sure it's on. So first things first, there is a browser, and I'm just doing that just to show you it's a browser in which you can pick whatever you have. I happen to have a lot of sounds from Electra 2 and many of my colleagues in the sound design business as well as my own very own. So from there, you can do that browser and file, load patch, save patch if you prefer that way, or even load a layer. So yeah, perhaps you might, or even download sounds from Tone 2, but perhaps you might want to start from a patch that you already heard and you want to kind of reverse engineer it, mind you, or reorchestrate it, or whatever you want to call it. Now, the more important stuff here as we talk about the layers: 4 layers, 3 oscillators here. So these are the 3 oscillators. Sometimes people say it's one big oscillator. I just like to say 3 because it's 3 windows. So from there, you can do things as well as control the semitones, the key follow, and such. But more importantly, you have some of these features over here, like you can control the octaves. So you have your different octaves like C3, C4, C5, and etc. Those kind of C is the root key of the keyboard or piano. So you can control that, or even keep that in mind to automate that later on. And yeah, but we'll start right here. Intervals, controls, and it sounds like semitones again. And make sure it's not too loud, too low. There we go. This controls like semitones. Fine. We are fine tuning tone. Sounds like it's cutting off a little bit of the harmonic content within that saw, but it's not quite unison, and we'll get to that as well. And pulse width, which does some pretty cool things depending on which one you're in. And now that brings us here to the categories. So in the categories, you have wavetable, ultrasaw, noise, and fractal sample, where you pull up an actual sample in there. And from there, if you pull up a sample, because I saw somebody ask, and I don't know why in the earth would you ask, because it says load right there, and to pull up a sample, and you pull the sample of your choice into there and load up the wave file, and then you go from there, and from that point on, you can adjust it within here. So perhaps another time I'll do that in another video, but that's how you do that. But from that category, you have subcategories in each and every one of your main categories, in which you have a ish ton of content to choose from. So maybe L alpha. So we have L alpha here, and I'm working with that. So to engage the other oscillators, you definitely have to turn on, and then you have volume to adjust the volume, because maybe you just want just a little bit of each and every one of those, which is quite important that you mix your sound that you are designing so that, you know, it doesn't be blaringly hot or anything like that, because first impressions last forever, just like me not saying first impressions right. So from that point on, as you see this arrow, we're going to guide you through here. And, you know, again, you have control of all of this stuff. Yesterday I said that you didn't have control of the mod matrix, the mod matrix in each and every layer. That is false. You have mod matrix, you have a mod matrix per layer. Whew, thank God, because the sounds that I was making needed it. So with that being said, I'm in layer 1 again. It is on, you know, off, on. There you go. So more importantly, let's go over here to the filters, which you have a ish ton of those. You know, low pass, LP stands for low pass, HP stands for high pass, and BP stands for band pass. So, you know, if BP is band pass, you see this right here. So if you adjust it right here, you'll see how the band pass looks, you know. And if I was to go to low pass, you see that the low pass is cutting off a lot of the high and high mid frequency content. If you're using the cutoff will do what it says. Wubs. So from there, you know, you have reso, which means resonance. So resonance is a notch. Some people call it a bell. I just call it resonance because it sounds like it's supposed to sound. And now you have more of an acid type sound to whatever sound that you're doing. Drive kind of forces a little bit more of the filter on it. For some reason, you know, you would have to do this, which engages your different kinds of saturation. Another one of the great things that I was talking about in the review that needs to be in a lot more plugins, period. There's no excuse for it. Soft tube, asymmetrical. And now you can start hearing what the drive is doing as it's applying the distortion on that filter. So from that standpoint here, we have analog, which analog is controlling just like the subharmonics that you would kind of hear in your analog gear, you know, and for that standpoint, you know, that's really controlled by VCAs, and is one thing that some people say that makes analog better. And, you know, whatever it may be, it's a subjective thing, but it's here, and, you know, and it works. So you have ring modulation, which you gradually have to push the sound up a little bit. And as you can see, the filter is taking effect there. Again, you know, where you see serial right here, and if you do serial, it stacks amongst each other versus it being in parallel by default. Parallel being this way and serial being this way. So, you know, there is a huge difference in that. If I was to actually use both of these filters, you can actually hear them being the harmonics of those filters stacked upon each other, which does affect that sound. Again, you have volume over here, and it does increase the volume of that filter or the sound that's within the filter. Now that is running through the filter, you got to keep in mind that this arrow is there for a reason, and that's what helps, as well as panning, which is extremely cool for when you are making your sound. From that standpoint, your filter will run into your insert effect, which is truly engaging. One real thing I was worried about is that I saw it had a local EQ that was pretty much the master EQ, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to take out some of the lower frequency content in the sound in the synth I'm designing. So I saw that there's an EQ along with some amp symbolization and a whole bunch of other effects that will affect it this way before it goes into this direction right here, into the settings, in which, again, you know, there are many different and cool things, including glide, which, you know, is the portamento. So, you know, you have that there as well. Probably will work better if you have it set on legato. So with that being said, there's monophonic, which was gonna have one sound, and legato, which is gonna have one sound as well. But it locks on, it latches on to the sound better, especially when you have it in glide. And the next thing is it will cut off the harmonics that you played on the last key, and then you have your different polyphonics, in which you can go up to 1 to 64 polyphonics. So yeah, and I'm gonna have it on 8. Anyway, so from that standpoint, from there, I want to talk about the LFOs, which LFOs again could be very tricky for anybody that hasn't dealt with sound design and are starting with Electra 2. And all the stuff I'm telling you could be, all this information could be utilized in any synth that's on the market. It is all rudimentary. I can make the same sounds and everything, except it will sound much different in Electra 2. However, the basics of a sound, of the philosophy of a sound or sound design does not change. So we have LFOs. We have different LFOs that you can select. You have 3 pages. Again, it's per layer. So, keep that in mind when you're making the sound. From there, you have triangle all the way up to fade up, and even some cool stuff in random. So I find that cool, and so that brings me to another point here of why I wanted to do this overview again. It's just to make sure that loud and clear. Again, when you are modulating something, because modulation is a very huge part of sound design and getting interesting sounds, especially in modern day music. So I selected random within this LFO, but there's another thing that you can do. You can switch to song mode or song BPM, and which that takes away from the speed. And if you go to the regular song mode, you'll be measuring the speed in hertz, which is kind of a normal way of doing it, but it won't latch to your BPM the same way as song BPM or trigger BPM. So keep that in mind if you want it to be as rhythmic and latch onto the rhythm of your BPM of your song. You need to have it in song BPM. So keep that in mind. Again, so let's start with the mod matrix. When I'm talking about the mod matrix, it could go over your head. So make sure that you pay attention to what I'm saying. And yeah, as I forgot another thing, but that's fine. I will go back and talk about it. So, first you got to select the source. So you have many sources that you can select from your envelope area to your main volume to all this, but more likely you'll be living in this couple of bars right here, or this square or whatever. So I'm gonna choose LFO 1. I chose LFO 2 like a dummy. So I'm gonna go back to LFO 1, and then now we're gonna go and select a different source. I was playing with the pan earlier, so this is how you have to look at this. So all this area right here is going from the oscillator. So the next thing that you're gonna go from there to from your 3 oscillators right here in that corresponding layer, you're gonna go into this layer right here, which this next layer was this right here, which is the filter section. So I wanted to use pan 1, so I'm gonna select pan 1, no panning. Why is that? It's because you had to go 0 to 100 again real quick. Corny old joke, I know. And then that's you'll hear the effect. Now you're starting to see where the level of sound designing can pick up just from a few clicks and whatnot. It's all about exploration if you're trying to be motivated to do this. Now, keep in mind that you don't have to have it at 100. It's just that that represents the intensity. So if I was to have it at 29, the effect isn't that dominant. So you can actually look up here and see how the pan is being affected. So I have it on 30. Now I'm gonna put it up to 100 again. You can see how dramatic it is and how the LFO looks, the low frequency oscillator looks, which is the random as it goes through the pan. So it does correspond to that visual right there of how the LFO looks, or how the LFO is shaped. for that matter. So yes, that's how you actually use the mind matrix, and that is a key part of sound designing, a huge key part. Another huge key part to sound designing in Electra X2 is the envelope. So working with the volume envelope, you know, ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release. Yep. One thing I had to tell you, working with this, I was a little worried about making plucks because I couldn't get the plucks right because I was a blithering, silly human being. So turning down the sustain will get you that pluck. Messing with that decay will give you a bigger pluck. Now, if you don't want that, of course, you go back and set it, which, you know, again, I think hopefully in the future that they will have something where you'll be able to reset that. Now, again, this is another key thing to working with Electra 2 because it's very handy dandy. They actually have templates pulled up. So going in from initial patch and resetting everything, you can reset all of each and every one of the layers, or reset just one layer, or reset the mind matrix, reset the arpeggiator, or, you know, create from scratch from a default layer. And from that default layer, this is what you will have right here. Perhaps I'm not going to teach that yet, but but yeah, it's all about just left clicking. There's nothing really difficult about it. But again, if you want a pad, you know, pads have a tendency to have a longer attack if you dial it in. So make sure that you dial in the attack. So you have that. So you can actually get an attack. So it's not going to really sound too great because, again, you have to have a lot of release as well. And make sure that you have that on deck. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on again to this point, which brings me to the arpeggiator. The arpeggiator is one of the awesomest things about this VST plugin. And this is what I just want to show you real quick. First, you know, it's off by default, and you have that per layer. So if I go to layer 2 or synth 2, you see I'm starting all over again and it's off. You can one thing I do want to tell you is that you control how fast and how slow it is from right here. So you have a whole bunch of choices. It's a little too much for me. And you actually can set up loop points as well with that button right there. And you know that. But here's some other cool stuff that you might not notice, and this is what makes this such a grand thing as well, is because you can pinch bend up and pinch bend down. Which brings me to this area right here where you have the trigger part. And what that means is that it is triggering. Come here, doggy. Dog break. It's triggering by key. Or you can have it in song mode to where it will continue from that point. And from that point, when it's triggered, that's what happens. So there was one thing I forgot. Oh, and don't get it twisted. This thing can it can FM whatever frequency or frequency modulate within each entire area as well. So I'm gonna show you that. And I think we should. And I think that pretty much wraps that up. I just wanted to do it again and show y'all a few things. But thank you so much. I'm DJ Av, and I am out.